So those people that are held in the Cluster A Help Center or the Cluster B Help Center. But right now I want to focus particularly with these two videos on the Cluster A Help Center. So I'm starting with this, and then tomorrow I will talk about the Cluster B Help Center, and then I will talk about the Cluster C Help Centers. So I think we should be organizing these help centers into these three broad categories. Of course, there are many things, many people that have all kinds of different things, and a melange of different personality disorders and mental illness characteristics, and it's just a big jumble. And we just what has to happen is that the social workers need to be very informed and educated on all of this. Many of them already are, and it's very easy to transition them towards this particular project, that these particular help centers and the holistic treatment that I am trying to ponder over and trying to establish, at least in theory, just a theoretical plan for those types of help centers, so that eventually, hopefully, someone will get something out of this and use it and implement this and brainstorm on it, and at least think about it, and you can put your own name on it if you want to. What's important to me is that we start thinking about these things, that we have a discussion on how to improve the entire healthcare system and the prison system. Yeah. So that goes together, obviously. So very important that we get a complete reform on this, and not wait until we have the AGI robots that will immediately see that this is just rational sense. Okay? But let's work on it until that happens as well. So let's already get started with it, because we don't have time to wait until more teenagers have committed suicide, until more suffering has happened, more domestic violence, of animals being battered, and women and children and people are murdering each other. So why wait? Why let this take a violent course downwards, spiral downwards, with particularly now in the era that we have just entered, the era of pandemics, of viruses. So this is not something that's going to go away. So overpopulation and meat consumption has brought us here. So now we have to deal with the consequences. We have to try to make the best out of that situation. So the pandemics and all of this, that doesn't make the situation better, obviously. That even there, when people are not allowed to get out of their house, and then the suicide rate is going to go up, the murder rate is going to go up, people are going to completely freak out, they're going to fight, and it makes me very worried. I cry about every day. I worry about this deeply, thinking about the dysfunctional families that are all out there. It's not always disclosed to the public. So there's only occasionally that someone leaks out a video of their internal domestic dysfunction. where some things go badly wrong, where you suddenly see a dog being abused, or a child, or domestic violence with spouses and so on. So that usually does not come out to the public. But when it does, then usually there's also a number of good Samaritans and angels that will call the police and the social workers, and they will try to get the dog and the child into safety. But it usually does not come out to the surface, So that's why it is so vitally important that we have these help centers, which help not only the people that immediately need help, like suicidal kids, homeless people, and violent people, but where we have, and that I will talk about that subject when I talk about the cluster C help centers. So that's for the public, that's for everyone to go to those centers. But right now I'll talk about the cluster A help centers, where we need social workers, we need police officers, we need strong people, strong guys with experience of handling delinquent people, violent people, crazy people, and so on. And sometimes they need 10 men to tackle someone who is completely out of control and crazy, and it happens all the time in the world. And there's a lot of Muslims out there that are doing jihads, and so we need to have very strong people and military people and police officers and patrol officers and social workers, and they should all be also trained in social work. They all should be also trained in psychology. They all should learn that they can't just be a Gestapo hurting someone who they use the word dehumanization. I don't like that word because it is too anthropocentric for me. But we can use the word, where they, I don't know what word could be used as a substitute for dehumanized. The word devaluated into, out of a mental state, a devaluation of a living being, because animals are also being devaluated, and to the point of where they treat animals like merchandise and children too. So it's a devaluation process. It's a psychological process that's very, very dangerous. It's a form of disconnect, of psychological disconnect. This needs to be prevented, and law enforcement is very important. I keep emphasizing on this because it's very important. And I see this, and I've seen this, and there are a lot of psychopaths in law enforcement. A lot of them that gravitate towards those jobs because they are thinking that with a job like that in law enforcement, that they'll have power over other people. So because that's ultimately what they're after. And that comes from a feeling of very deep insecurity and unempowerment. And all of these people should have a mandatory therapy attendance. Like, I don't know. I would say they should have a mandatory therapy attendance of groups therapy of 2 hours of group therapy per day. So that's, and all of this should be free of charge, of course. But I think every single person should be summoned to do group therapy. I think this is very, very, very important. And so that, whether they want it or not, most people don't want it. Like my mother, they all think this is beneath them, or this would be too humiliating, or this would be exposing them. The ego doesn't want to be exposed, of course, and they want to keep pretending to be the tough person or the smart person or the sane person, but underneath it's cooking, okay, in the vast majority of humans. So that's why I think it would be very important to have a mandatory attendance of group therapy every single day. And it needs to be split up, of course, into different groups. They should not be having more than 20 people in one group. And we have to just use and reutilize public facilities and also religious institutions that are right now, many of them are empty. Lots of empty buildings, by the way. Lots of churches where there's sometimes there's just one person sitting there. All of this can be reutilized and made into actual therapy institutions where religion is not mentioned. Okay, very, very important. So we need to outlaw religion, and we need to recycle religious institutions into facilities that help the community, and that offer the rooms and the space for actual holistic treatment, like group therapy and art therapy and listening to classical music, actually listening to the music that was originally written for the Christian church, which I have never seen anyone in these religious not communities, in all of these fundamentalist communities. Many times I met some people, and they would take me with them also in LA. They would take me to their church, and they'll say, "Oh, I will play the piano there, don't you want to sing?" And I'll go, "Yeah, sure." They take me to their church, where I'm promptly interrogated by some real old man. It's like, what does he want from me? And then he starts to humiliate me because I said that I came to Los Angeles to do therapy, and they started to humiliate me on this. That's how fearful these people are, particularly the ministers, because they want to have power over other people. They don't want someone to do therapy. So all of this needs to be completely reformed and recycled. The old school people, even if that's going to be a little bit of a paradigm shock to them, it is very, very important that everyone has to attend these group sessions. And if this is a little bit of a plunge for a minister like this, where he suddenly loses the grip, loses his control over other people, where he is suddenly the one, who is in the position of client, which he never wanted to be, But that's vitally important, even for him, even if he is 80 years old. This is vital hospice work for him, even if he's 90 years old. It doesn't matter how old they are, and have practiced bullshit their entire freaking life, even 100 years. So it's never too late, to actually be confronted with truth and love and healing, and actually being listened to, and actually be feeling safe for the first time to talk about these old emotional problems and feelings. So, okay, you guys take care. Bye-bye.